Today we will finish up the discussion of the 4Gs. Over the last 3 videos we've looked at the first 3, which are God is great, God is glorious, and God is good. If you missed any of those, please be sure to watch them. The 4Gs are a simple and consistent way to apply the gospel to everyday real-life situations. They're not just for information, they help you with real transformation when you use them to preach the gospel to yourself. So, the final of the 4Gs is that God is gracious. And just as with the other of the 4Gs, there is a gospel reality and a gospel implication. The gospel reality is that God is gracious, which means He approves of me. This 4G speaks to our failures, that feeling of not being able to live up to someone's standards or expectations, the fear of not being worthy or not being appreciated or loved or acknowledged. It speaks to God's grace or unmerited favor, or getting what you don't deserve. In this case, it's God's favor, acceptance, and approval that we don't deserve. Our sinful nature has broken our intimate connection with our Creator and pushed us far from God. That's evident by our thoughts, choices, actions, and attitudes. We live to please ourselves and do whatever we feel makes us happy. But also, a big part of our broken sin nature is that many of us live to please others and gain their approval. Some of you live every day with the sense that you need to continually do things and perform in order to keep someone else happy, so you can win their approval or avoid their disapproval. It might be a spouse, a parent, boss, a friend, or a group of people. Their approval of you has become an idol. Many of us do the same thing with God. You feel you have to continually perform well in order for God to accept you and to feel you're worthy of His love. This is one of the biggest lies that our sin nature manufactures, that it's up to us to perform well enough so that we will find approval from others or from God. That we've got to keep it up so we can get their approval or so we can avoid their disapproval. You might be doing it this very moment, today. You're thinking about someone or a scenario where you're trying to figure out how to keep someone happy with you, or to make yourself look better in their eyes, or to earn God's love. Well, here's the gospel implication. God approves of you, so you do not have to prove yourself. You see, we can't perform well enough or do enough good to influence God to accept and approve of us or make Him love us. There's no way we could ever do enough to earn God's love, and besides, that's not the way He wants to give us His acceptance and approval anyway. It's not our performance that matters. It's the performance of Jesus that matters. You see, Jesus did perform perfectly, and He lived a completely sinless life and gave that life, that perfect life, in exchange for our sin-broken lives. He took your sin and gave you His right, perfect standing with God. God approves of you because of Jesus. You are already accepted and approved by the Father because of what Jesus already did, not by anything you have done or ever will do. This 4G can be stated like this: God is gracious, which means He approves of you. Therefore, you don't need to prove yourself. Please don't misunderstand this to mean that God overlooks any sin in your life, that He sweeps it under the rug, or that He condones any lifestyle that is contrary to His nature and design. God does not now turn a blind eye to sin in your life. Don't mistake His approval of you because of Jesus for approval of your sin. God's approval means you no longer have to pursue gaining approval or avoiding disapproval from God or others. You get to live in freedom from that pressure of performance. You might need to be freed from the grip of living to win the approval and acceptance of others. And here's a fact. If God has approved of you, It does not matter who disapproves of you. It's not their approval of you that matters in the end anyway. If you live every day with the knowledge that God approves of you, then you are free to live in a way that pleases Him. And you're living that way because of the truth of who you are, not to keep God happy with you. So now let's recap the 4 G's. God is great, which means He is in control, therefore you don't have to be. God is glorious, which means He alone is to be feared, therefore you don't have to fear others. God is good, which means He is enough, therefore you don't have to look elsewhere. And God is gracious, which means He approves of you, therefore you don't have to prove yourself. The 4 G's capture the essence of the basic truths of the gospel. They provide a simple but extremely helpful way for you to think through whatever you're facing at the moment and how you're reacting to that situation. We all need to be reminded on a constant basis of what is true about God and what is now true of us because of Jesus. The 4 G's serve as a beautiful way to remember that. So when you feel frustrated, ask yourself if you're trying to exercise control and remind yourself that God alone is in complete control, and then rest in His control. If you're afraid of someone or intimidated by someone, remind yourself that fearing God as you should will empower you to love others and not fear them. If you find yourself dissatisfied or unfulfilled, look to Jesus, who is your satisfaction and sufficiency. And if you're caught in the performance trap, afraid of failing God or others, and wearing yourself out to win approval, remember that God has already thoroughly approved of you. Believe the gospel.